we're doing A Midsummer Night's Dream, and we're doing a student matinee. And generally, the audiences were above 60 and all white, except for the student matinees, in which they were below 19 and all black, because that's how a lot of these programs work. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But I'm standing in the wings, and I'm listening to the show, and this one woman's doing a monologue. And it's a monologue from Midsummer Night's Dream where basically a woman is saying, you know, like, why don't guys like me? Like, I'm just as pretty as this girl, and guys don't like me. And a girl in the audience literally went, I know that. And then a bunch of people started laughing. And I was like, yeah, holy shit, that's amazing. That's awesome. And she came off stage and she was like, oh, those kids are not listening, like, And I was like, yo, slow up a second, man. They got what you were saying. Like, that's the whole point, right? That's the whole problem with young people in Shakespeare, right? That they don't get it and they got it. That's a good thing, right? And she was like, no, they weren't listening to my monologue. They were talking while I was performing. And I realized, I was like, oh my God, you think this is about you and not the story and not the audience. And I was like, I went into a sweat, right? Because I was like, what am I doing here? This is supposed to be another big ticket. Why am I not feeling cool about this? Why am I freaking out right now, wondering why the hell I'm here? So again, I was on a year contract, and halfway through it, 6 months, I said, I got to cash in my chips. I'm out. And again, I was 23. And again, I was told things like, you'll never work in this town again. You'll never work in New York again because the community's so small. Do you know what you're doing? Do you know who you're saying no to? Do you know who I am? I was like, all right, well, look, I'm really sorry. I know who you are. You're a great person, but this is just not for me. And I went back to New York, and I was like, just in such despair. I'm living on the couch of my old apartment that I used to have, but I rented it out, so I'm sleeping on the couch. And I'm there, and I'm back in the Bronx. I'm teaching Shakespeare because I was like, I need some money, and I need some creative energy and some thought. And I was looking for what I was going to do next. And all the while, there's this school in France that I always wanted to go to. It's called the Lecoq School. Ha, ha, ha. And that in London, I saw this company that was mind-blowing. It was the one company that blew my mind about what theater could be, and they had gone to this school. And also, actually, I should mention, throughout my training, I was lucky enough to work with teachers who had gone to this school. And always when working with them, they would always ask me, what do you want to do? Like you're doing a scene or something, you're making an improvisation, and they say, what do you want to do? What do you want to say? And that question was really profound for me because I realized in those exchanges that I had a voice. It wasn't necessarily that acting wasn't about me reading Shakespeare, somebody else's words, and saying to be or not to be, that is the question with the right diction and pronunciation. It was more about, oh, I have something to say. I can do my own work. So I was kind of trying to struggle, figuring out what I should do with my future, and I ended up just on a whim applying to that school. And at the very same time, in New York, there were two old boys that we were roommates. He went to NYU as well. And another one who was friends with him, who was kind of crashing at this, pad full of people. Yeah, you do that to afford housing in New York. And that's actually another tip I would give you is the friends you have now aren't necessarily the friends you have when you get out. These guys I wasn't friends with in high school, and they were awesome. One of them, the guy I was living with, is a wicked DJ in New York, and he's this blowing up Uproot Andy. You should check him out if you get a chance. And the other was a guy named Chris Kang, and he was running an organization called Schools Without Borders. And I was telling him about my work in the Bronx, and we're just kind of sitting around drinking in our apartment. And out of the blue, he's like, look, I'm running a program in a month. It's a month away. It's in Kenya. I want you to come and run it. And I was like, what? No, I don't know anything about Kenya. I don't know anything about, what? He said, no, I really like what you're saying about storytelling and working with these kids. Come and run this program. I need someone to run it. And so, long story short, within like a week and a half, I got into Lecoq, and I said I would go there. And from then on, 23, my life was completely changed. That summer, I went to Kenya, and I discovered something that I'd never felt, and I still to this day could argue, I haven't really found that here, which is that theater had a meaning. Stories had a meaning and a purpose. and it was part of our daily life, their daily lives. So what we would do is I was with this group, and they would go into communities, and they would go into the community, and as if they came here right now, and they would interview people at random. They would go in and be like, so what's going on in the community? What's going on in the UCC community? Who's like, what's the topic that's hot? And they'd interview people, and then they'd put together a play, perform it in the community with you people, so it'd be like we did it right here on the stage, and you would see it. And you would see you appear in the show. And it's amazing, right? Because then you in the show can say, yo, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. And it was a dialogue. And the actors would be like, fine, you can do better, get in. And you'd get in, and you'd be like, no, this is what really happened. I didn't actually cheat, right? See, like the thing was on my hand, and you start engaging in a dialogue in the performance. And you're talking about issues that are affecting you right now in this moment. And it was so immediate and so real. And it was amazing. I was like, wow. And then I thought, why did I never learn about this? Why did I never learn about theater in Africa when I went to all these fancy schools, all these big ticket places? Why did I never learn about this story? I learned about it through Peter Brook, which is this guy you always learn about, and he's supposed to be the god of theater in the West. He's this British guy who went to Africa. But you don't learn about the actual people who taught him. And that was mind-blowing, about the story that we're told of how to value and who to value and why. And I just want to tell you a quick story about this guy I learned, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who's a Kenyan writer, who I just want to share him with you because I doubt you'll ever cross him. Ngugi wa Thiong'o is a hugely important writer. He basically tried to reinvent a Kenyan theater. The history of Kenya is that it was colonized by the British. And in the 60s, they had a huge revolution. It was called the Mau Mau Revolution, in which many people died to free that country, to get rid of the British. Mau Mau was something crazy, like it was translated to... Does anybody speak Swahili by any chance? No, anyways. It basically was, fuck you British, get out of here, was the sentiment of it. And so after it happened, there was still a national theater, and that national theater was showing Shakespeare, which is really funny, in English. And so Ngugi wa Thiong'o was like, hang on a second, Africa is like the oldest, we're the oldest people. We've been telling stories for centuries. Why don't we have our own theater? Why is it not in our own language? Why is it in these buildings and not in the street or the villages, in the language of the people? And why is it not telling the story of what really happened? What really happened in the Mau Mau? Who died? Who the heroes were to realize it? Not necessarily the politicians, but the people on the ground. And so he started to do that. And the government slammed him down. They did shows for 40,000 people in villages. And the government tore down the theaters, arrested the people, and they exiled him. He had to move out of Kenya for his life. And that, to me, when I learned about that, I was like, wow, shit. Theater is way bigger than just a story. It made the government afraid for people to hear these stories. It made the government afraid to learn about people hearing stories in their own language. It made them want to tear it down and created violence. It was political. It was much bigger than just to be or not to be, that is the question. Now, I'm not knocking Shakespeare, but I'm just telling you that I learned about a different perspective. And an amazing writer that was writing about Ngugi wa Thiong'o was talking about his work, and he said, you know what his work was about? It was about finding an alternative vision of existence.